Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I have with me today Ambassador Gitesh Sarma. He was India's High Commissioner to Australia for about 1.5 years, another 2.5 years, I think, sir, from 2019 till 2021 early. And he was also India's Secretary West at the Ministry of External Affairs. Welcome to ThePrint, sir.
Thank you, Nainima. Very happy to be with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving us your time. So let me begin with Australia, sir, since a lot is being discussed between India and Australia. We are now strategic partners. Prime Minister Modi recently addressed the Sydney Dialogue. We've seen the strategic partnership go into another level, and it has all happened under you. So how would you really define the transformation that has happened in the India-Australia bilateral ties, which was mostly transactional earlier, but now with Quad happening, and Australia is one of our key partners within the Quad, how do you see this transformation taking place?
Well, Nainima, the last 2 days have been particularly happy for me. Prime Minister Scott Morrison, he addressed the Bangalore Tech Summit, and he also announced the setting up of a consulate in Bengaluru.
Yes.
At the same time, today, Prime Minister also addressed the Sydney Dialogue. And it always seems to happen back to back. Only the other day, Foreign Minister Maris Payne was at ORF, and before that, EM Jaishankar was addressing Australian National University. So it sort of works in tandem these days, and our two countries are fortunate in having a very, very good understanding at the highest level. But it didn't really happen out of the blue. I think we have to, when you said strategic, I must make a small correction. It's actually comprehensive strategic partnership, one level higher, one notch higher. I think a lot has happened over the years. So let's keep that in mind, that Australia is very much guided by its relations with the West, with the United States, and India's own relations with the United States got transformed in these few years, or the last decade or plus. So I think the way international relations have been shaping up, it was only a matter of time before our two countries started working together. And if I may say one more thing, Australia itself is a very transformed society. It's not like the society that we understood Australia to be when we were growing up. There's a lot of immigration element. A lot of people, from the Indian diaspora is pretty now prominent there. Everywhere you find Indians. And what is often not realized, the reverse is also true. A lot of Australians who now know India a bit, a lot of cricketers, IPL, so there is a kind of two-way process. So I think that was an appropriate setting to transform our ties to comprehensive.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was coming to that, Ambassador, on the comprehensive part, and I believe that happened while you were there. And it was, I remember in 2020, when India was under the pandemic and there was complete lockdown, yet both sides managed to have a virtual summit between both the prime ministers. And that's when it really, the level got upgraded to comprehensive strategic partnership. But sir, coming to the fact that the question that is being asked quite a number of times is that this wouldn't have happened had the China factor not played in, on the background, with the fact that a change of government in Australia with Prime Minister Morrison coming in and taking a stance that, probably this far and no further when it comes to Chinese aggression and other things. For India also, I think a similar situation happened. Was that the only factor, or you think that there were other factors also where these two countries came together?
Well, comprehensive is, the fact that Australia is a pretty developed economy. Although its industrial base is more limited these days, it's more in terms of exporting minerals and coal. But technology-wise, in terms of scientific talent and potential, the innovations that come out from Australian laboratories. So I think that provides for cooperation across the board, and there's several areas we can work to mutual benefit together. So comprehensive by nature is between countries which have very comprehensive economies. And, it's a kind of society, it's a continent that people are spread all over this continent. So they have to use all kinds of innovative technologies, fintech also in order to do things efficiently. So there's a lot to give and a lot to take from the Australian. So I think that base was there. But if you look at defense, if you look at the political relationship, these all sort of came together. I think you're right. In Australia, there is that sense that China is some very large factor in their foreign policy. But to say that only that, I think that would be a little kind of not charitable to the relationship. As I said, because of the immigration, the immigrant population, the students, the cricketers, there are lots of Australians who have a personal stake in this relationship. You mentioned about the current government, but if you look at a lot of people have stake in the relationship. If you look at Anthony Albanese, the Labour leader, when you talk to him, he has gone quietly all over India with a backpack. He's enjoyed India the way people enjoy India, from these kind of countries, really without much publicity. So a lot of Indians have traveled to Australia, and the reverse also. Matthew Hayden is a member of the Australia-India Council, and imagine his aggression on the cricket field. And he spoke so eloquently about Gandhiji last year. So you find these examples that India is now a familiar country in Australia. We don't have to talk much about it. Yes, China is, we should recognize that is one element, but we have our own different, kind of positions and where we emerge. We have a land border with China. Australia doesn't have. So to say that we have identical kind of, situations, that is a little excessive.
Mm-hmm. So then also, I believe, it was while you were there at that time, we brought Australia again within the Malabar, which had happened about 13, 14 years back. And that was a big step. That also gave a major boost when it came to the defense cooperation. And when I speak with Australian High Commissioner here in Delhi, he tells me that, the military exercises have grown 4 to 6-fold. But how do you see that? How do you think that evolved? And do you think that is going to only grow as time comes?
I think so. That's a very, very promising area. Apart from the political aspect, the strategic dimension, I think not every area is moving at the same speed. But I do believe that on the political front, things are moving well, and the leaderships, and again the defense side is also moving well. The economic side, it will catch up. And as far as the military to military cooperation is concerned, we have to be conservative in our expectation. There will be those exercises which add to those kind of understandings. But when I went to Australia in 2019, that was the uppermost kind of question which kept being thrown at me. So that's happened and that's gone. So you have to look at other levels. There are Air Force to Air Force exercises, the Armed Force, Armies also works with them. So as we get used to them, but there is one promising area which if you're looking ahead, comprehensive and strategic means very wide level range of cooperation, and strategic means long term. So I think when it comes to developing defense technologies, developing whether relevant technologies, whether it's drones or other kinds of platforms also. Eventually, I think there would be scope for our two countries to work closely. Australia has a lot of technologies which are relevant as confidence level goes up, and the nature of our procurements have been different over a period of time. So it's not easy to immediately start off, at a very high level. But I think it's picking up, and there is a beginning.
Mm-hmm. So then also Australia this year, India-Australia had the first ever 2+2 dialogue. How important do you think that was to have a 2+2 format talks between both the foreign and the defense ministries? Was that really the key to make it a comprehensive strategic partnership? Or do you think that this also was needed with the changing global dynamics post the pandemic for supply chain links and many other things?
I think, with the Quad countries now, we have a 2+2 kind of mechanism or arrangement. So it was important that we have that kind of dialogue with Australia. And when we look at Quad, sometimes we err in looking at it as four countries which are similar coming together. But there's a lot of activity between each of those countries also. Yeah, depending on where they're positioned, how they're positioned. So I think the dialogue between India and Australia, that helps India participate in the Quad process, and also Australia. That when we go, when we went to Washington, for instance, the fact that we had a conversation with Australia would really help us in understanding each other. And there's certain common kinds of concerns, there are certain common approaches, so that they come out so much better when we engage in this 2+2 kind of dialogue. I think it was very timely this time. In September, there was a lot of activity, Afghanistan, and then you find that the China factor also coming in a large way, COVID, there's several things. To have a physical 2+2 was, I think, very special before the actual Quad in Washington.
Mm-hmm. And so now the buzz is, and I'm sure you're also keeping a track, is the fact that how AUKUS is sort of playing the role, invisible role within the bilateral partnership. That issue came, we saw how Australia took India's confidence, and India was aware that, okay, such a deal will be sort of announced. But how do you see that playing out as far as India is concerned? Because after all, Australia is very near to us. So when they have those nuclear propelled submarines, do you think this benefits India, or how does it work out?
Well, I think there was a lot of heat generated in the international space on this AUKUS, but I think it was not entirely surprising. Many things in international relations, we are aware of the trends, but how they actually manifest themselves, that is different. See, if you look at the AUKUS document itself, it said the discussions were on for 18 months. Right. And so that went back from September, you could see it all the way to the Trump era. And if you take back 18, last year in 2020, in July, there was a document, Australian Defence Update. And that did talk about Australia developing a credible defence capability and its ability to look after its own security on its own for at least several days before its other traditional allies came. And there was also talk of certain missile capabilities. So we did sense that they're looking to come very close to either MTCR or something very similar to change the way that they have been looking at their own defense. And the Americans were also encouraging Australia and other allies to invest more in their own defense. Right. So I think it was a bit of that happening. I think if Australia is looking after its own interests, I mean, the way that we also would look after, Quad is not a defense alliance. So each country is reasonably clear that they will have to do the job to a large extent themselves. So I think if Australia is looking in other ways, then we would tend to be understanding of Australia's postures.
But do you think the matter will be settled between Australia and France, because that puts India in a spot?
I think there is a bigger story, and we should not miss that. The Australian decision to go for nuclear subs, that is a strategic decision and really transformational. Right. That the capability away from Australian borders, much longer distances they can traverse. Whereas France and Australia is a commercial kind of issue. So I think it would be on a higher platform, and Western kind of countries overall, they have more together, more to do together than to do separately. And France is also a Pacific power. If you look at New Caledonia and their presence in island territories in Pacific, there is no choice but countries like, whether it's Britain and France, or France and Australia. So I think overall, I think the temperatures can be lowered over time. But let's not put them on the same, what the Australia's decision was absolutely transformational, and it will have repercussions for a long time, the way Australia operates, the way installation will happen. But with France, I see that eventually, at some level, it should settle down.
So then finally coming to the India-Australia trade, now that is going to be the next most important aspect. We get to hear from the Australian Trade Minister that a deal will be signed by December, an interim deal, after which the comprehensive partnership will be signed upon. But, this has been going on for almost 10 years now, the negotiation on the trade deal. Do you think these countries are now close enough to have an interim in December and then the entire comprehensive agreement by next year?
Well, Australia was very disappointed when India didn't sign up to RCEP. And it was quite clear that they had invested a lot. Yeah, yes. So they were very, very kind of disappointed. But the beauty of this is in every kind of conversation, there was respect that for the Indian concerns, Indian approach, and they always came across as very respectful towards India. Having said that, Australia is highly dependent on trade, and if you see, the way that China has taken punitive action on against Australia, it has targeted Australia's trade in some ways. But as far as Australia is concerned, they would look for other markets, and India is an important destination. But at the same time, India's economy is very differently structured. So I think there has to be a little realism. What is being talked of is an early harvest agreement, and what we read and heard Commerce Minister on our side saying that this might well provide a template as we deal with other players. So we also might find India-Australia early harvest as helpful when we negotiate with others before we tackle the other bigger players. But that apart, let's also be, again, as I said, realistic. Australia is a country under 30 million, 25, 26. So we get a market of 25, 26 million. They get a market of 1.3 billion. So it's a little skewed that way. The other is if you take a sector like automobiles, which India is now very strong. But in Australia, apart from the eastern side, it's a very dispersed dealership in very small population settlements. It would be very expensive to operate. So Australia has certain specific characteristics, is the kind of market it has. So, so I think there is a lot of messaging going on in this, that we won't be able to buy the kind of products they were exporting to China, and ours will be different. Agricultural products will be more difficult for us. Meat products will also be very difficult for us. But there's certain other items. So I think there would be a lot of symbolism. It would be consistent with the new understanding between our two ties. It would be a model with which we can go to other, potential trade partners and do similar deals. So I think at the moment, you could also say that Australia will be having elections next year in summer. So nice to say that Australian leadership that we have in our bag, it's not just a political or defense. We also have a trade element. I think so. A lot of things are coming together. So any incremental progress also is very much welcome. It would be a huge psychological boost. Australia, they tend to look at these economic aspects very closely.
So then lastly, my question to you will be, I know you have retired from foreign service, but you are now in the Andhra Pradesh government as their special officer for international cooperation. So I believe you continue to look at this space and the geopolitical movements that are happening. But if you can tell for our viewers a little bit the role that you're playing and how do you see India in the coming years, how do you think the geopolitics is going to pan out?
Well, I haven't as yet formally assumed my responsibilities with the Andhra government, and the role that you say that play. I have previously also worked in the Andhra government before. So what we find that in India, there's a lot of decentralization of foreign policy, and in the old days, everything was done in Delhi. But at least some of our states, they have become very savvy, and it's amazing, really. It was an eye-opener for me that you go into this small Sarkari type of offices and you have a highly motivated civil servant at the and on opposite you and telling you about his plans for this market or that market. The second thing is, the diaspora also. And the Indian diaspora is spread all over, from Middle East to United States, Australia also, as I said, the fastest growing immigration in India. So each of these states, and in a decentralized setup, they find that they have to be very responsible for the diaspora, giving them special deals. So that's something which, we go to diaspora for investment, but suppose they have some needs, should you not respond to their needs? So I think we should look at India's foreign policy from that angle, that it's top down and also from below it comes up. So that aspect is clear. And as far as some of these states are concerned, they also have direct dealings with, or at least aspirational Western Australia and Andhra Pradesh, for instance, have an understanding and working together. So some of these things, documents have to be converted into things you can touch and feel on the ground. So I think that's where the challenge is between the aspirations and making them some kind of making progress towards realizing those objectives. And I think today's younger generation also has a kind of global vision. They don't. In some ways, they're unemotional. They don't. Put them in front of a computer terminal wherever they're stationed, they start working and delivering. India's diaspora, India's young talent is like that. So I think everyone, we will all. It's people's. I think diplomacy and foreign policy these days in many ways. So I think we will have some things to contribute from Andhra Pradesh as well. But Delhi will continue to guide on the big issues which set the platform for the smaller players to take the cue.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, sir. I wish you all the best in your new role. And it's interesting to see how even states are also steering and driving India's foreign policy under Delhi's guidance. But thank you for talking to ThePrint, sir. You please take care.
Thank you very much, Nayan.